During Valtteri Bottas' mixed 5-year spell at Mercedes, he tended to show why the team kept him for so long, as often as he justified why Mercedes finally got rid of him. The headline statistics mark Bottas out as one of Mercedes' most successful F1 drivers and puts him among a pretty rare group of individuals. He scored 10 wins, 20 pole positions and 58 podiums for Mercedes, helping the team win 5 straight constructors' titles. Yet by his own admission, there has been one glaring failure since joining Mercedes in 2017 and leaving it after the 2021 season to switch to Alfa Romeo. In an interview with Bottas late in 2021, we asked him if he thinks he gave a fair account of himself at Mercedes and showed the world what he's capable of as a driver. And during his answer, Bottas said, "I honestly feel like on my best days, whether it's a race or qualifying, I'm unbeatable. But unfortunately, I don't always have the best days." Now, he hastened to add that no one has, which is true, but Bottas' problem is that he had far too few of those days to make the most of his 5-year opportunity with F1's most successful team. The result is that his record alongside Lewis Hamilton looks like this, with Hamilton superior in every metric by a significant margin. In their time as teammates, Hamilton won 4 championships to Bottas' 0. He scored 50 wins to Bottas' 10, 42 poles to 20, 78 podiums to 58, and scored almost 600 more points. A lot of those numbers represent boxes Bottas feels he's ticked during his Mercedes career. He used his time to win more races for Mercedes than Juan Manuel Fangio, and in reaching double figures he achieved something only 4.5% of drivers in the history of the World Championship have accomplished. But he emerges from that direct comparison with Hamilton, unsurprisingly, with significantly inferior numbers. As a result, Bottas never convinced Mercedes he could be the team leader in a post-Hamilton era, and more importantly, he never mounted a title challenge. This is where Bottas ultimately feels he's failed at Mercedes. Bottas says, "I can't say that I exceeded any of my expectations. I have pretty high expectations for myself personally, maybe a bit too high. I can't say I exceeded anything. Where I feel like I failed, obviously I didn't manage to win the Drivers' Championship. But it wasn't simple alongside Lewis. He always got the upper hand." Bottas says that one of Hamilton's strengths is his consistency, with rare off days and a marginal variance in performance. The upshot is Hamilton's baseline level as a driver is so high that to outperform him is difficult, and to consistently outperform him is almost impossible, as Bottas found. The 2021 season, with 4 pole positions but only 1 victory and a massive gap to Hamilton in the championship, neatly sums up Bottas' Mercedes career. It's perplexing that the same driver who can match Hamilton for poles in the season can crash out of the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix while fighting with a Williams. Or who can look so stunningly fast on a weekend like in Italy, yet be an anonymous 6th in Abu Dhabi, where Mercedes and Hamilton needed him most of all as a championship rear gunner. Then there are freakish misfortunes, the wheel nut problem that cost him a podium in Monaco where he was much better than Hamilton, and the puncture that ended his strong comeback drive in Qatar. The peaks have never been the problem. Bottas' big weakness has always been consistency, and he never worked out how to rectify that. He says, "If I look back at every season, I tried everything I could. At least for now, I haven't figured out what I should have done differently." We're going to pause this video here briefly to say thank you for watching and ask a quick favour. If you're enjoying this video, please hit the thumbs up button and think about subscribing to the channel if you're not already. It really helps us out, and we've got big plans for 2022 with lots more videos we think you'll enjoy. There are 2 ways of looking at this. Bottas could be happy to be a good enough driver to run Hamilton close and beat him on occasion. Or he could be frustrated by the knowledge that it was clearly possible to beat Lewis, he just failed to do it consistently. The only person who can answer that honestly is Bottas. So we asked him, and he said, "I think it's a bit of both. The biggest thing is for sure it feels a bit of a failure that I couldn't win a title in 5 years with Mercedes, and Lewis always manages to win it. But in that sense, Lewis is the best driver in Formula 1 history. Knowing that sometimes I can beat him, it's a nice thing. But I'm sure when I go ahead with a different team, I think I'll have a different kind of perspective, that there's so many things that I can definitely be proud of." Bottas' peaks and his working relationship with Hamilton sustained his position for several seasons, but it also constantly gave him false hope. How many times did we discuss a potential Bottas breakthrough or a realisation of what he needed to finally take the fight to Hamilton, only for that confidence to be knocked back by a Hamilton masterclass and a Bottas stumble? They say it's the hope that kills you, and that's what those opening race wins in 2019 and 2020 did, as did every qualifying session that ended with Bottas beating Hamilton to a pole. These were glimpses of what Bottas could be and raised expectations, but these would then be crushed, whether that was Hamilton rising to a new level, or Bottas underperforming in qualifying, or making a bad start, or getting stuck in a Grand Prix, or suffering one of his myriad misfortunes like a puncture or a technical issue. There's no doubting Bottas' raw speed, but as a racing driver he comes up short in a comparison to arguably the greatest ever in Formula 1. Maybe only by a fraction of a percentage, but he comes up short nonetheless. There's no shame in Bottas being bested by the best, and competing in sport requires a mental strength that means he's probably better equipped to deal with it than most. But it's a fierce mental blow, one Bottas has taken year after year, and that type of barrage cracks even the strongest athlete's mental armour. It's been easy to sympathise with Bottas over the last few years. In fact, Bottas' extreme swings in form and fortune reached a point where, perhaps unfairly but entirely in good humour, he commanded a regular section on our post-race podcast, jokingly titled Valtteri Bottas Sympathy Corner. His situation has often pulled down the veil of professional sport, one that stops a lot of people recognising drivers are real human beings, and revealed the emotional toil of constantly trying and failing to realise your life's goal. In his toughest moments, Bottas has looked dejected. He stopped enjoying racing in 2018, which was his worst year with Mercedes. He lost some wins to misfortune and had to give up a merited one to title-chasing Hamilton in Russia. That confirmed to him he was just a support act for the rest of the season and was tough for him to accept. Off track, he was also going through a complicated time personally that would ultimately manifest itself in a divorce by late 2019. As it happens, Bottas regrouped and had a very decent 2019 season. Then he started the delayed 2020 campaign with a victory, but just 5 races later, he looked crestfallen after the Spanish Grand Prix, where he had the air of someone who knew just a handful of races into the season that he was being pummeled by Hamilton again. In 2020, he was more motivated, fitter, and more confident than ever after utilising the start of the coronavirus pandemic and a happier home life to elevate himself to a new level, but he was still falling short. And still the answer wasn't obvious, other than a vague Hamilton is just better. In a sporting context, Bottas doesn't want, need, or deserve sympathy. This is the pinnacle of competition, and he's been up against one of the greatest drivers of all time. If he's not good enough to go with that, it's no real shame, it's just reality. But from a human perspective, it is easier to sympathise. Bottas has worked for this his entire life, he's dreamed about it since he was a child. Every year he works harder, gets better, feels he gets closer, and falls short. Yet no matter how often F1 seemed to punch down time and again, Bottas came back for more. His faith sometimes took a knock, and his performance fluctuated, but the man himself asked for no sympathy. He says it's been a bit up and down, and sometimes it's for a short term, sometimes it can be for a longer term like months. It's the beauty of the sport and the beauty of high-level competition that it's like a constant wave. Sometimes you ride on a high for some time, and sometimes you're in a low for some time. I'm still here, still pushing on, and still enjoying it. In all likelihood, Bottas' switch to Alfa Romeo isn't going to give him the missing success he craves, but expectations will be very different for his switch to a team that has spent the last 2 years towards the back of the grid. So Bottas will need to set a new set of goals to match a very different environment, and there is every chance he will achieve them. Because while Bottas did fail to achieve his ultimate ambition at Mercedes, he is far from a failed Grand Prix driver altogether.